Look within the simple for the most complex. Hello everyone. Today I would like to talk about how when we look at the complexity in our lives, there's a sense of ourselves that is keeping that complexity relevant. So first, before we want to do anything that's irrelevant to our action to change our condition, we want to actually look at what's relevant to our condition. So we want to very accurately look at our condition. What that means is that if you're sitting at your table and wanting to begin your designs or whatever, or wanting to write something or do something, you want to make sure there's room on the table. So first look at the table, look at the simplicity, look at how simply things are present in your reality before you want to change them. To have this ability in an instant will just be you as you're being carried throughout this life. You begin to notice different variations in how you perceive yourself when you begin to perceive yourself. This is a natural product of it. Think of it as if light is discovering the different ways it's reflecting off things. And there are many things you're reflecting off. However, when you begin to look at, in a sense, not just the simple truths, but the simple forms of how the truth is shaped, then you see that you still have comparisons beyond the shapes. What that means is that you have an awareness beyond just one word. You can read paragraphs and you can write more than just mere letters. So man is constantly looking at his individuality to gain more of an understanding of its collectivity. So you need to understand that now that the human being is looking out, he is, based on the way his conditioning is, and many people in the generations that may hear my voice, and even generations before me, they have been believed to be in a certain way of living only. Your conditioning should not lead to entrapment, and you must recognize that entrapment and get rid of it immediately. You can see that the best moments of your life are ones where you're really aware of your living. So what that means is that there was one level perhaps of a great speaker who is observing, the result of his speech, and there's one who is doing it in the moment. And so a speaker is profound in my eyes, who you are listening to your speech. So look at how interesting what you're speaking about could be for you, that you are even listening to it. And so that sense of awareness is actually not something that needs to be externalized based on what it could be and what it could not, but something simply understood and grasped. Sometimes you see the wisdom of the sage as in a silent smile. So begin seeing that when you look at the truths of something, they're not the immediate truths. What that means is that, for example, how our systems of governance and management, in a sense our legal systems, how they acknowledge a person is based on evidence, because you cannot judge someone's internal experience. But what you begin to see rolling is that in the shape of your simple truths, there is an unshaped truth that continues in your eyes. So when you are self-aware, when you're looking in the mirror, you are seeing a reflection, you're seeing an external form, which is you actually in the mirror, but then you're seeing that, wow, the nature of this relationship, it's as if I have a presence somewhere, but I'm really not present there. And so the mystic spark really begins to, in a sense, burn a bit more, and you begin to see a greater fire of your own inspiration to become aware of the greatest way you're living. Many people who very blatantly say, I want success, I want to be happy, how do I get happiness? Tell me how I get happiness. It is not something that you take because we are not giving a solution to a child. I am giving you a solution to a man who is so involved in his life, to a human being who is so involved in his life that there is no time to get caught in irrelevant distractions, because your moment of experience is relating everything. So your fascination shapes up and aligns your intelligence. Be fascinated in your life. Be fascinated in all the life around you. And look at the form of it. Look at the form of the tree. And sometimes many people say it's not relevant. For example, you know, how is the tree relevant to this or this? And you know, even now recently they found the golden ratio or whatnot. The relevance is that you are creating the relevance. And so you must recognize that the gaze of man is transcendent. It communicates things beyond his limitations because he is of a limitless being. And so your humanity can choose to stay in its illusion, but when it hears the party next door, it will choose to see that it must look at itself in the mirror, prepare itself, and in a sense, express into a very profound involvement in life as presence. When you have a profound involvement in life as presence, you will see that the simple forms will suddenly point to the complex. And so the complex was always beside the simple because the spectrum was being looked at from one point of awareness. And when I say one point, even numbers become valueless when you recognize the creative moment that you are as an observance of all creation. In other words, you are seeing that how right now you are observing, for example, me talking, the room where you are and some ideas you have, and you're really like in your moment. When uncertainty hits or when certainty hits, either one, you are always in the moment. And so for you to cultivate an experiential understanding in being your present moment means that you're always handling things in the present, not by thinking about it, by creating separations and trying to find the collective, but by simply recognizing that the greatest thing that man can be is a collective existential allowance to be his greatest individuality. You will see that the simple forms will suddenly be in other ideas. What that means that I look at a branch and I see the different branches, right? And similarly, similar to how even in our mathematics we have the concept of fractals, you can totally see, maybe not exactly like a fractal, but shape can translate to other thought. When you see how thought engages with form, there's also some subtler levels where man is not acknowledging. In other words, we're just saying, oh, I have thoughts. We're not looking or exploring that nation called imagination. Because we're not aware of our images because we think we are our images. And so when man is in such confusions, complexity wakes him up by making him look at the simple. And so there were certain beings. For example, there was a man in Tibetan Buddhism named Guru Padmasambhava. And his life is very beautiful. It has its own emanation, and you just simply see that this being had different senses of himself. In other words, in his statue, there is symbology of showing how he was just in one view he was a compassionate teacher. In another view, he was the wrath bringer. He was the one who would, for example, confront the most chaotic forces, right? And how does chaos confront chaos? By bringing attention to order, and an order that is omnisciently kept by the chaos. So when you see two chaotic beings coming to agreement, then they can, you know, shake hands and probably, you know, become friends or something. Friends in co-creating a new reality. New plane of existence. But it is very important because the simplicity in your life is always teaching you of the complexity. And the complexity is reminding you of the simplicity. So many people who go in many routes, you may choose to think you have to externally move your body to go around certain environments where your energy could be amped up. That is definitely an option which you can try. However, I would recommend, by having such an accurate sensitivity to your existence, to your sense of idea of humanity, of idea of being a thinker, having a complete, accurate awareness to the concepts of the object of experience to the experiencer, the object of observance to the observer. Man will get caught in the observer effect until he remembers his cause through a more collective view that is not limited to physical definitions, to how physicality. You see, every aspect of life within a multidimensional system is communicating with every aspect to be kept into an existent form. What that means is form likes to be formed. Right? And when man begins to receive information, he is seeing that he's taking that form and putting it in formation. You are taking the forms that you have observed and then in a certain movement of meaningless forms creating value. And what that means is that I am simply saying sounds, but you realize that you are extracting a meaning that is internally implied when you hear, for example, any word. So therefore, we must not ignore the simple relationships that are showing profound existential experiences. What that means is that many people think that their lifestyle is the problem, or the way they think about themselves is the problem, and to some degree it is, but the answer is not coming from where the problem is. In other words, the problem is the student. The answer is the teacher. And so if you were right now to teach yourself your greatest lesson of getting out of any slump, what would it be? And you would be, it is your recognition of a greater ability to do so. And so I don't want a self-help book section in libraries, but I want people to help themselves immediately by knowing that you must. You must teach yourself, you must cultivate, you must take care of yourself in the way that you're also taking care of the ideas you're introduced to, the things that you're reading. Deepen your gaze. Books hopefully don't have ads on them. You know, so begin reading books and read them not as a sense that it is you reading it, but dissolve and become not a fly into the world of the author, but become an omniscient view, gazing the creation of one man in his words. And so it is very important to read selflessly, to learn selflessly, to then learn from many selves. Wisdom is your natural allowance to be aware of all that is. And so with a self-awareness and a self-remembrance that is, in a sense, so within, you will see that by finding Mr. Within, man works with other dimensions of his experience, not as a physical being, but as a collective awareness that is always being adjusted naturally to any form of reality that it chooses. That, in other words, you see, right now, what is the human being is like the tip of the finger, right? If you think you're the tip of the finger, it'll be really hard to discover the whole intelligence of the body that is even keeping you alive. So we need to see that in order for us to be able to move past our shape or the body that looks like a tip of a finger, we need to become more aware of how we are relevant and irrelevant to our environment. And in looking at that, we find an existential awareness that is a very silent and still place. You will suddenly see that your mind will suddenly, in a sense, become very quiet, quieter than perhaps the libraries where the loudest words are written. And you will see that man is an experience beyond man when he has acknowledged man, when he has observed man. And so that observance, because it has the ability and the knowing that it is a confrontation of both the considerations of space and time, it is beyond that space of time. In other words, you see that what is very beautiful about the vision of man is that it is a transcendent gaze. In other words, many layers of knowing are working together. And regardless how biologically the mind is designed, biology is also designed to, in a sense, flow with fluctuations between many different spectrums of consideration. You see, like, for example, I am considering, let's say the metric system for measurement, for example, right? Now, I am considering that, so that is real for me. In other words, in order for me, at some point the human being in his communication realizes that in order for him to be able to communicate more, he needs to look at life more to see more real things. Once the vision around you is real, your communication is clear. So honesty is not just something that is in you, but you must also begin cultivating an honest environment by you being an honest expression of your environment. So wherever you walk, there is no fear, no thoughts of stabbing companions, but simply the thought of life continuing as it is. In other words, regardless of whatever name we're given, we will see that once our mouths are shut, we're just here, we're existence, we're life. And so to be aware of this life will realign your sense of space and time. Now, I also want to talk to a branch of society which has found interest in substances and psychedelics. And so I want to also say, take this simplicity approach to any complexity and begin seeing that where are the intentions of an action coming from? The intentions of an act are coming because you are acknowledging something in the present, but a part of you knows that a greater change must be. So, in that sense of your own longing, you utilize certain substances and certain practices to change your view of life, to then have a new view. However, that is a method, but that is also like us having, steam engines when, technology is developed much more. So what I would like to suggest is that do not see substances as things that are setting you free. See yourself that you are setting yourself free, and if you do choose to follow in the wisdom of Terence McKenna and many other speakers in that area, you can then very compassionately, gracefully, from a very comfortable existential seat of self-awareness, then experience different fluctuations in your life. What that means is that, by the way, don't think that society, or in a sense, a certain range of conditioned ethics should limit you from exploring yourself. Yourself is an engagement with life, and so you're engaging yourself differently, for example, when you take a substance, but you can always engage yourself differently in any moment. It is not something that is too external. It is an internal knowing. You will see that your certainty of the psychedelic vision even is an internal knowing, because you don't know what you're seeing. Where are you? What you're seeing, right? And so there is the view that either the brain chemistry of the mind is fluctuating or changing, or as it is changing, new aspects of a unified field of experience are being presented. What that means is that we thought man was individual. No, man is actually the plane of existence, and the individuality is just a playful consideration of his being. So you see, collective consciousness knows through even non-existence, because it is an observance of existence that is keeping existence there. And so the unseen is not seen by form, but in a sense just unseen. Just you in a sense observe what is seen, and in a sense are found in the presence of a knowing beyond that form. And so the simplicity in knowledge is really found in how you can interpret complexity. Sometimes when you read stuff, sometimes when you're learning stuff, when you're absorbing knowledge, or when you're looking at things, even let's say you're going out for a walk. When you go out for a walk, you can see that because different things mean different things to you, you have different views on whether this form is complex or simple, or in however way you like to, in one dot, create many lines of spectrum as a mind. But you will see that after some point, a creator that is elevating in its ability to confront existential transformation wants to be a burst of unknown creation. In other words, once you've in a sense experienced known creation, you want to go into a burst of unknown creation. And so you need to begin to see that how that occurs is that you are still thinking that an individual form is trying to free itself. When you think an individual form is trying to free itself, it is never you who you're working with. You're working with an illusion which you are considering to be you because you have not looked deeply enough. When I say look deeply enough, in other words, there's one view you can have from the bottom of the mountain, and there can be a view you can have from the top of the mountain. Totally different views of reality. So it is up to man to take his shades off when he wants to see very clearly the stars at night. And in the day, of course, learn from your shadow. So, handle complexity with simplicity. And so if you're in a complex problem where your life is so agitated, you're frustrated, you don't know what to do, you don't know where you are, you don't have any sense of inspiration, simplify everything. That's all I can say. In other words, never let your physical system lead to a point where it is so stressed and depressed that it feels it cannot be maintained. You can be maintained very beautifully. And how that maintenance occurs is by your trust and knowing in a presence that is present. That's all you need. Do not create stories to then distract yourself. You see, there's one way, let's say when you're concentrating in life, and in various dimensions of life where concentration can occur, you will see that life will put in front of you more plastic bags to pick up from the ground the minute you acknowledge the act and the value it has. So once you see value in something, reality shows it to you. But it says the involvement of this means you have to, in a sense, leave some aspects of your reality. So what that means is that if I think I'm a loser, the winners will not talk to me until I know I'm a winner. And so a winner does not mean you are working with ideas or you're caught in ideas. A winner simply means that you have been aware of the state of awareness where you have transcended the game. And so recognize it is your game. When I used to play soccer, football, I would see that I was a unique player in my own interpretation of how the game was working. And it is in unique realities coming together to have a very similar co-creation which is valuable for mankind. Do not take the value of simple acts lightly because you're forgetting or not being aware of their complexity. The butterfly effect is not something that man should acknowledge in this dimension of experience. The butterfly effect is actually at the state of being where you see that all the cause and effect and the separation you see between it in a certain way of self-acknowledgement suddenly opens your mind to all that is open there, to all that is there. And so a gentle breeze will remind you of the faces that you forgot. But your task is to continue. In other words, after every talk a great leader says, he says, I can do another one. And so you see that when you're inspired to contribute to humanity, your actions and your quality of life shifts. What that means is that if you see someone who is only trying to make it for himself, only being selfish, and guys, I mean this in a very authentic way, in the sense that you must be very authentic to then have good intention. Because if you're lying to yourself, there are liars around you. And a simple cause can lead to a complex effect, but a complex cause can also lead to a simple effect. And so you will really see that how you are acknowledging also the forms of your cellular planes really is showing you how you can engage them. In other words, if you are just a regular person and I look at you and I'm like, oh, this person is such a bad person, randomly, based on my random, let's say, insecure impression or whatever I have as a person, I say, oh, this person is like this, before I see you. I have created an illusion of you before I have met you. And so there is a huge thing, because we see that many men, and it's not just men, it is just many human beings at a certain stage of their development feel a lack where they feel they need to put something there. And they feel externally they need to get the things they want, because this is reality. But an advanced communicator, a pilot of consciousness, someone who's becoming aware of his internal dimensions beyond form, you will see that as you look at what is valuable for you, you are perceiving a nature of being valueless. And in that valuelessness, there is a clarity of transparency where you are simply standing on the terrace among your collective knowing. And so the collective knowing is a sense of being that is always adjusting the tip of the finger. And so the tip of the finger, which man thinks he's only alone, is actually with the intention and direction of the whole body feeling different waters of reality, different waters of, let's say, universal expansion or multiversal expansion. These are very important ideas, because the multiverse is not just something that only a few people should read in textbooks, textbooks that are still in the realm of theory. Multiverses must be understood experientially. So Mr. Within is telling you that understand that our society has developed to a point where man has access to great ideas, but he's not utilizing them. He's watching cat videos on YouTube. So man must not say the cat video is the problem, but say that it is his existential responsibility to get inspired and involved in his life, where he shuts down the Xbox and creates the next Google, the next Microsoft, the next huge advancement for humanity to learn from. You want your presence to be like that. And so what you leave behind, think of it this way. I think that Mr. Within, in a sense, feels as if that every day you're alive, there are certain things you're doing. And so in this 100 years of life, or whatever amount, let's say a couple 100 years of life, let's say hopefully we can increase, lifespan. But you will see that you are leaving something behind. And think of as if you are, in a sense, a creator, similar to not the complexity of the lack of trust you have whether there's a God or not, but just in the way that one is an artist. And so an artist is drawing every moment of his existence. And so as you're drawing your being, as you're shaping who you feel you are, you will begin to see that, think of it this way, that after the end of your physical end, you will be stepping back from the painting that you've been drawing your whole life, and you're observing it with the knowing of the cosmos, with a collective sense of consciousness in the acts which you have had individual conscious attention to do. You must allow greater senses of your knowing to be activated. If you let your sense of knowing be relevant to shape, you will create the possibility for an elusive reality where you are putting values before receiving the values. And that is an act where the pilot of consciousness needs to be aware of, because navigating through this plane of existence requires us acknowledging every being as a presence within the same moment of experience. So man is that gift of existence that can take his whole environment into a moment of self-awareness, which is unified with all experience. Man is a great leap, and the ape needs to begin seeing that there's no monkey business here. There is no conspiracy which is relevant to you because it is not real for you. You are creating it based on your sense of what you think is there. But the conspiracy in its internal dimension is like that. Because externally, who knows what's going on? How do I know? But I just know that internally you must not agitate yourself to think that there's an enemy behind every door. A mind is healthy when it knows of its existential compassion and eternal continuation as a knowing of being. You exist. How can you move into dimensions of non-existence? Only by considering your non-existence. So you know what's funny is that man is at such a table of creating things that he simply sees that he sometimes might mess up and suddenly feel, wow, I messed up, and suddenly create ideologies of huge, overwhelming, fear or whatever, You keep it very simple and understand that keeping it simple doesn't mean you're not handling the complex. It does not mean you're not handling the complex. Internally, the way you're receiving life, it's a very simple and blissful experience. It is like the Buddha suggested, like as if holding a flower in your hand. You're working at that intensity and sensitivity of calmness, gentleness, presence, and if need be, you can fluctuate. That is a recommendation. However, that is for your internal experience. Your external experience requires you to be so self-aware and clear and present in the moment in acknowledging the different things that you know, that you are really a complete moment of creation of great ability. So how I see it is that it's not that there's one man saying, oh, I'm able, I can do this. It is one man seeing that the ability which has value, which is timeless, spaceless, is coming from a timeless, spaceless sense of origin and awareness. The mind of man is transparent when he looks at the essence of clarity, because clarity becomes first a self-reflection, but then dissolves into a sense of emptiness, which all creation is kept within. So in other words, a static aspect of your collective being is always acknowledging your individual movements. So you will see that after you have done the greatest act, after the Prophet has said his last words, he looked up to see what would happen with that individual act of expression. And that acknowledgement that came through his knowing, perhaps through the beauty of a man who was crossed in many ways, he saw that the collective observance of existence is such a greater relationship that the individuality of man is forgiven. And that is why it was perhaps a moment where an individual was looking at his dissolution as a message of how the collective looks at you. Remember yourself, and you are not separate. Remember yourself, and you are beyond the unification. You are its cause. You are the origin, you are the spark of all dimensional presence. And so once you become aware of this, life begins communicating to you in a way where as if you are taking it more seriously. So playfulness does not mean there is not seriousness. You can be playful in fighting. And fighting is a big thing. Swords are hitting you, you're dodging them with the playfulness of the martial art master. You know? Or the playfulness of Jet Li as he just floats in the air in his movies, you know? So we need to be aware of these relationships. Because man is utilizing relationship as a technology, so we must update our technologies. Our iTunes is getting updated every minute. Why is our self-awareness not being updated? Why are we not finding new ways to view our new ways? Get it? We need to be in that state of mind. And so the inspiration comes from having a complete ability as a moment of observance and presence, acknowledging the simple in the complex and the complex in the simple. This is when you're giving yourself an awareness, a selfless awareness to observe the systematic movements of self. And so you will see that you're initiating yourself into more of a static knowing, more of a static knowing, but a dynamic expression. So in these talks, there's a certain range where you see the attention is simply going to a static sense of moment. And so it's a kind of, it fluctuates from a daydream-like experience into a complete silence and stillness where you are the moment observing all expression that is occurring. And so the maintenance of the being is being done by a greater sense of collective consciousness and self-awareness. And so your knowing will sprout many flowers, and many trees will branch out into greater complexities and simplicities that are not just limited to this sense of space and time. You do not move beyond your vision. You are the vision that is always moving beyond. And remember, the most complex walks are simply done. Much blessings and namaste, namaste, namaste.